But in situations where a bath fan or two were vented into the attic, many times that wasn't enough to handle the moisture that's up in there in the wintertime, especially if the ventilation was not open by means of baffles that create that space between the insulation and the actual that soffit vent, allow a pathway. So a scenario like this, keep in mind as well too, is that a lot of times you'll have bath fans venting into the soffit. And one thing, just kind of a pro tip here to keep an eye out for, is that as you're looking at the home, whether it be as a home inspector, as a home buyer, homeowner, not too many people as far as homeowners and home buyers by themselves without the assistance of an inspector, manage to take a peek inside the attic space. But one thing that you want to be aware of is that for many, many, many years, as we started to install bath fans, and then we started to have our intention was to vent them out from the bathroom, the hose for the bath fan, it was rarely vented to the roof. And that's the ideal location for the roof. Now, the reason many people didn't do it that way is because you'd have to put a hole in the roof in regards to the hole that's created by that vent opening for the bath fan. Most builders of the time frame, really up until even now, some builders will vent the bathroom vent out into the soffit. And what they'll do is they'll just put that end opening of the hose right at a vent opening just outside the bathroom. And one thing you want to do as you walk around the outside of the house is identify the bathroom window. And if there is a bathroom to the outside wall, and there usually is, typically the bathroom has the smallest window of the house, and it's usually on the back side. So once you identify that window on the outside of the house, typically in the back where that main bathroom is, look to that overhang area. And if you look right here, there happens to be a vented panel right at this smaller window. If the bath fan is venting to the soffit or the overhang, the hose typically is ending right where this vent is. And if there are or were problems in the past, you would see like a residue, almost like it'd be dirty along these openings here. And in certain cases, especially if it's a light colored panel or light covered overhang material like this, you'll see a dirtiness to it. And that's typically as a result of the moisture that is being projected outward. But the thing to keep in mind is that, think about the attic ventilation system. The air naturally comes inward into the attic, and ultimately it escapes through the ridge vent. As this movement of air that naturally happens, if there's a bath fan that vents into that soffit, what happens is that moist air that is being attempted to be vented outside gets pushed right back up into the soffit. And in fact, in many cases, works its way right back up into these little cavities here. Okay, so this is a view of an attic with the baffles in place that separate insulation from plywood. We want the insulation right there, but we don't want the insulation suffocating the vents. These baffles, as basic in design as they are, allow, in this case, by this design, it's allowing two little pathways here for the air to travel past the insulation and freely go up into that attic space. That's providing that kind of jet stream of air movement. And so, any moisture that might develop in the attic just moves along with that air that comes up along the soffit and hopefully vents and exit outside through the ridge vent. The bath fan, if it indeed is vented into the soffit, what typically happens is that you'll have this cavity right in here. I'm just kind of highlighted in here in red. It'll be all black. It'll get all moldy, all in here. And it's pretty obvious. You should get a sense of where that bathroom is if you can, a lot of times the inspection of the attic is very, very limited. If you were to see, remove the attic access panel, take a look inside the attic and find an attic like we're seeing this picture here with, 2.5 feet of blown insulation in there. Even if you could get yourself up into the attic, you really want to be careful on doing that, because it's a situation that it's one of those lifelong discussion points among home inspectors on whether or not to get up in the attic or not. And keeping in mind that as much as most home inspectors would be able to manipulate themselves from one end to the other, when you get up into the attic, you take a really big risk in doing so, especially if you can't see where your footing is. And you want to be careful on where you walk, because what you might think is going to be a solid location to rest your foot may not even be close to the case. There could be some modifications or whatever the situation is. There could be a junction box that's not really secured. You can break something. So you really want to be careful in getting yourself up into the attic. I know a lot of inspectors consider it a kind of a badge of honor to get up in that attic, and they find themselves up in the attic. If you're going to get involved in doing mold inspections, you pretty much are kind of obligated to get up into the attic, because you're obligated to investigate things more in a detailed fashion. But as home inspectors, typically we're not going to get up in that attic, and it's something that you want to keep in mind. Our inspection is limited, but we do want to get a sense of where the bath fan is located in the attic, and also too, if we don't see any sort of vent hood outside on the roof, and there's a bath fan in the house, then that bath fan, if we don't see the vent hood on the roof, you don't see any sort of hose extending itself beyond the insulation, is that only means one of two things: either the bath fan is not vented at all, or the bath fan is vented and it's vented into the soffit. And in many cases, we can't make that assessment. We can't make that assessment with confidence because we can't see it.